Third business line role I think is worth looking at is research. Obviously, there's a wide range of research, and I wouldn't profess to focus in on R&D or science or commercialization, but I do think what I'm trying to do with our regional efforts with Oregon and Washington is what is a regional market opportunity lens that will allow regional manufacturing agreements, workforce agreements to show the win-win and get past sort of big elk hunting economic development and zero-sum competition between the states, and to show, here are the numbers that this makes sense. And I know in the Midwest they've done some interesting stuff around auto parts years ago. So where universities can provide the data that show the advantages of regionalism to state governments and help politicians to get past the instinct to just fight over press announcements, et cetera, I think there's a huge opportunity for universities there. Just lastly, on the resource question, yes, we have federal dollars shrinking, but whatever the number is, $140 billion in economic development when you add it all up, clearly those who collaborate and innovate are likely to advantage themselves. And I don't, this is the true believers in the room, so I don't need to speak to those. The other thing I would put out there is the infrastructure work. Infrastructure, we in the West, we recently had a meeting and we're looking at kind of a regional infrastructure, not a bank, but actually a mechanism, a clearinghouse function to identify how we're going to go at the $600 billion that we're going to have to spend in the next 10 years or whatever the number is. And infrastructure as a system driver, as a system pull for innovation and for aligning activity, I think when you look at wastewater treatment, transportation, both new and old, transmission, smart grid, broadband, all the integration challenges of that, local governments are going to need to figure that out. And local technical assistance challenges in an era, a lot of people believe that municipal finance is sort of becoming almost like peak oil. It's starting to go away. And public-private partnerships using private equity, public pension funds, commonplace in Europe, in the United States in the last 50, 60 years, that not needed. So if we're beginning a period where municipal finance is not going to cover infrastructure needs, whether 21st century or plain old roads and bridges, how we're going to design more complicated products, essentially, and help, I'm a small town with $1 million water project. I mean, Goldman Sachs will not want to talk to you. Can we bundle it up to 100 million, et cetera? So this is the biggest thing I'm involved in my job right now, is how do we, there's all kinds of conversation about a national infrastructure bank that's not going to pass Congress anytime soon, but how can we develop the skill sets, the mechanisms, the collaborative tools, and the local technical assistance to support 21st century infrastructure. I think how local technical assistance could be serviced by this regional tribe, I think is a huge system pull, a huge system opportunity. There's money that's going to be spent there. It obviously affects place-based development, and infrastructure is a big word that means a bunch of things to a bunch of people, but in your town, people know what it means, and there are certain projects. I think how universities can engage and support innovation in that sector will bear fruit, and there's more pizza on the table.
Thanks very much, Dan. Excellent timing as well. Aneesh, you're next.
Okay. Well, I look forward to the Q&A part, but I thought I'd begin with a bit of a theory of economic growth from my lens and in support of the President's innovation strategy. So the traditional model, and the part that has been very exciting from my state experience, was sort of a lot of the top-down activities that led to real innovative regional R&D economic development activities. And those were top-down activities. The Rolls-Royce collaboration in Virginia with Virginia Tech and UVA, sort of the signature economic growth story. The great work that's been done in Danville to create a regional innovation hub, and the work that's been done in another rural part of the state with SRI to create these pockets of innovation, bringing communities together. They were driven by the top down. The governor put resources to help these initiatives happen. In my White House role, we're much more focused on the theory of bottom-up change. And that's the slight distinction between my life previously and my current life, was how much I was focused on big dollars for top-down versus little opportunities to sprout bottom-up. And I would argue that from Washington perspective, the bottom-up theory may actually have more relevance for all of you. And here's the example of it in I'm going to describe this in several parts. The first part is how a bottom-up theory of change works with examples for helping to facilitate the jobs and industries of the future and promote that regionalism. The president outlined on his first day in office that there are 3 elements of bottom-up change. That is, we must start with the premise of making information more transparent. And you can see this if you visit the Economic Development Administration website, the clusters map that's just recently been made available, or the historical work that the PTO has made to make patent filing data accessible. You all could be in the business of aggregating just the myriad sources of data and making really obvious to the community or to the region where are these pockets of talent, not in some convoluted and hard to understand 800-page report, of which we had way too many of those when I was in the governor's office, but literally, hey, who's the best researcher that got an NSF grant on polymers? You could actually find that information in the equivalent of a Google search today, because we're making that information more transparent. Probably the most exciting area I would say of that is the work we're doing to make R&D investment awards more transparent. We have a prototype of an R&D dashboard that we've launched. Second is to engage people more in the resources as they come alive, making participation opportunities more relevant. So right now we make you know that you have to visit various federal agencies when we bring a reverse trade mission to your town, buyers from the Middle East to look for smart grid products and services. And the university might even host the event in a region, but no entrepreneur in the area knows that it's happening because they're not on your listserv or what have you. Imagine a world where there's the equivalent of a Facebook news feed that tells the entrepreneurs in your region all the various activities and resources that are available to them in a timely manner. In part, the President's Startup America partnership is creating the infrastructure to support a lot of this, but the data will be available. How it's put to use will be up to you. In fact, the President's gathering with the Startup America board just this week to talk about this opportunity to support 100,000 high-growth entrepreneurs in the coming years, many of whom obviously are going to be in your regions. But the third element is the real innovation, I think, has been our collaboration work. And here, I'm most excited about the NSF's Innovation Core program. I'm assuming all of you now are familiar with this thing. But what makes it so exciting is its bottom-up design. Every 90 days, all the eligible PIs going back several years can apply. Spot $50,000 awards made within 30 days, or I should say every 90 days you'll get the new round of awards. 25 made within 6 weeks of the initial announcement. Who would have thought it would have happened that fast? And what's happening now is this bottom-up movement. Now, I call this hug a PI. You literally want every economic development officer in a region to find out who are the eligible NSF awardees in the neighborhood. And like, how do you throw every mentorship resource on the planet around them, and every quarter test yourself, have we gotten folks approved for the spot award? 50K isn't all that much, but when the time to respond is 90 days, it's much better than the world was fighting your 8-year battle for the $2 million line item in the budget and whatever. This, to me, is very much in the spirit of bottom-up collaboration, and I'm asking every VC in America. I'm like 0 for 100, by the way. Nobody knows that this program exists. You should be out there telling all of your donors, the board members of the university, the economic development staff, everybody else, literally, here's an assignment. Within the next 90 days, find 5 people who are eligible, support 3 of them who want to submit an application, and ensure 1 or 2 of them make it. I mean, whatever. You get, set some goals for yourself. That can happen right now. The only other point I'd make is that this discussion of regional economic growth is incomplete if you don't have sector-specific concepts or strategies in place. And I would like to make just a final, and this is a discussion for maybe Q&A, let's just take health. I focus my attention on health, energy, education, manufacturing. How many of you, by a show of hands, know that we have a $1 billion challenge opportunity eligible right now for your medical staff in your communities? Raise your hand if you know about the $1 billion challenge. You've got to be kidding me. You represent some of the best and brightest minds in regional economic development and university-based economic development. If you don't have your hospitals and doctors and clinics thinking about the care delivery system of the future, that emphasizes remote monitoring and telemedicine and prevention and wellness and care coordination and analytics to ensure that the doctor knows which patients to call today because they're likely to get sick versus wait on who calls on them for an appointment. If you're not inventing or harnessing your own capacities to think about how you can help contribute to the care delivery system of the future, if your faculty, whether it be computer science faculty or health faculty or anything in between, if they're not submitting ideas to the $1 billion challenge, if you're not even aware of it, then shame. So we've got similar challenges in health. Shame on us as a country for not getting the word out. We have a webinar today, by the way, in the middle of this session at 3 o'clock. But besides that, this is the thesis. You have the bottom-up theory of change. You have these sector-specific market-changing movements. I'll do one more. How many of you know whether you've got a community involved in the Race to the Rooftop program to dramatically lower the cost of solar panel installation? You do. You've hopefully got a grant. Over 30% of the American people live in communities that are in an environment where they're going to lower the soft cost of solar panel installation. And again, you guys should get in there and figure out how you want to participate. The same thing is digital promise and education and modeling and simulation for manufacturing. Go on for hours. All right, anyway, that's the bottom line. I strongly encourage us to take this bottom-up theory of change and find ways to build teams to respond, drawing from the resources in our respective regions to solve these big challenges. Thank you.